Today we're going to talk about the top 5 motorcycle travel mistakes so you can hopefully avoid making them. Now this is actually a remake of a video I put out a few years ago, and it's the same 5 mistakes, but I wanted to expand on it. I've had quite a bit of motorcycle traveling experience since I made that video, so I wanted to bring some fresher perspective to the topic. We're going to jump into it right after this. As I said, we're going to be talking about the top 5 motorcycle travel, long distance riding mistakes. These are things that pretty much everybody tends to make. I know I've made them plenty, and some of them I continue to make. Now, like I said, this is a remake, and these are the same 5 mistakes, but totally different perspective and take on the topic. Now, because it's a remake, I am going to throw in a bonus tip at the end, so make sure you stick around for that. Mistake number 1 is overpacking. This is something I absolutely did on my first trip and absolutely did on my second big trip. It seems that almost every trip I go on, I think, I narrow my gear down and down and down, and I think I got it perfect. And without fail, every time I get on the road, I'll be on a trip for a week or 2 weeks. Inevitably, I will always be stopping at a post office to ship things home because I brought too much, the bike's too heavy, I want to get rid of some weight. I happen to do a lot of off-road riding, but even when I didn't, having a heavy bike still isn't ideal. It doesn't handle as well in the twisties, it's a pain when you're trying to park it or slow speed riding. It's like a circus act. Now, I don't have a ton of advice on this except you probably want to take what you think you need and then cut it down in half. That's probably a good starting point. You'd be amazed at how many things you'll bring. Even for a 10-day trip, you'll end up wearing mostly the same clothes almost every day. It might be the type of thing where you have to get out there, try it for yourself, and you'll learn quickly, okay, I'm wearing the same shirt, 3-4 days in a row, so I probably didn't need to bring 5 shirts on this trip for a 5-day trip. Now, originally, mistake number 2 was under-planning, and I stand by that. I think you should have at least a loose itinerary, some kind of general guideline. The reality is most of us are working on a limited time, and we want to make sure that we maximize that time by not figuring it out as we go. Just have a general guideline of where you want to go, what are your goals for your amount of time that you have off from work or away from your family, and then you can maximize that time. But I'm going to expand on this and say mistake number 2 is actually over or under planning. For me, I'm an absolute over planner. I am a very detailed oriented person, so I will sit down and I will make an itinerary where I have myself, okay, day 1 I'm going to do this many miles, I'm going to land in this area, I know there's camping around there. Day 2 I'm going to do 300 miles, day 4 I'm going to do this many miles, and I continue to do this knowing that that is absolutely over planning because it still gives me a loose guideline. I don't ever stick to it, it's not realistic, and you're only setting yourself up for failure and an awful lot of stress. But having some kind of plan is definitely helpful. You don't want to overdo it, and you definitely don't want to underdo it either. It'd be a real shame to have 2 weeks off vacation for the year and you didn't do enough planning, so you didn't do all the things that you wanted to do because you didn't have it structured well enough. Again, just don't overdo it because you will be pulling your hair out and frustrated and feeling like you're failing at what you're trying to do. Mistake number 3 is too much focus on destination. Now, a lot of times what we'll do is, we have a certain amount of time, we have a certain amount of things we want to do. So we think, okay, I'm going to go to Yellowstone, then I'm going to go to Glacier, I'm going to shoot over to South Dakota and see Deadwood, Mount Rushmore, the Black Hills, and all of that. And all of a sudden the whole trip becomes about just getting to Yellowstone and then just getting to Glacier, rather than enjoying the journey and allowing things to unfold. If you leave yourself a little bit of time for that in between, that A to B, how many things you'll find that weren't on the map or, just things you weren't expecting to stumble upon. Maybe a ghost town or a little, village that you want to hang out in for a few days. If you don't allow for that and you're too focused on just destinations and spending time in those destinations, then you're going to miss out on a lot of that in between. And that to me is really the good stuff. I'm actually going to expand on this mistake though and say not just too much focus on destinations, but just overall cramming. Now, I do this on short trips, but even on longer trips, I've been known to do this. just about 10 months ago, I left home indefinitely. I sold all my stuff, moved out of my apartment, and I had all the time in the world, and I still managed to overcram and overstuff my time. I have a tendency to want to do it all now and see everything and maximize my time, and so I just try to fit so much into a short span of time. But it's better to take what you want to do, cut it in half, and try to double your time instead of trying to fit a month's worth of traveling into that 2 weeks. You'd be better off taking a week's worth of travel and stretching it out over 2 weeks. It will be far more enjoyable. You may not see as much, but it will be quality over quantity. Mistake number 4 was originally staying in too many hotels, but I'm going to go ahead and extend this out and say overspending. Generally just spending more money than you need to spend. Traveling on a tight budget is honestly quite a gift. You will be forced into situations that you might not have otherwise taken advantage of if you had a lot of money and you were just burning up your credit cards and spending all your savings. Try to restrict your budget a little bit because, well, number one, you don't want to come home broke. I would recommend, rather than going to a 5-star hotel every night, that you camp a little more, or you put yourself out there to meet new people and possibly be invited back to their home and have dinner with them. And this was happening a lot to me on this last trip. I'd be sitting on a curb somewhere, looking at my phone, trying to figure out, okay, where am I going to camp tonight? Someone comes up to me, starts talking about my bike, asking me what I'm doing and where I'm going. And the next thing you know, I'm at a dinner party with their family, and I'm spending the night, or a few nights, as the case was from that particular situation. And that was such a wonderful experience that if I was just staying in hotels and not putting much thought into that, or not being open to other options, I would have been stuck in that routine of like, just go to a hotel and blah, blah, blah. Well, I would have missed out on a really great experience. And the same thing goes for camping, maybe a little more than you might think you want to. I'm not saying go on a trip completely broke, but don't be afraid to go with what you think might not be quite enough money. You'd be amazed at how creative you can get with your finances when you're put in that situation, and you can make your money go a lot further. This also means that you're not going to come home broke. You're not going to come home and have to think about saving for the next trip. Maybe you take what you thought was enough money for one trip and turned it into 2. Don't get me wrong, it's nice to have a little luxury too. I certainly do stay in hotels once in a while. I go out to nice dinners once in a while, and I just live a little more civilized every few days. I do a lot of camping though, and I absolutely love it. And some of that is because of my budget, and some of it is because I just want to be outside, sleeping in a tent next to my bike. It's an expensive pursuit in some ways, but once you have the motorcycle, the traveling on it part is actually relatively inexpensive. So embrace that. Mistake number 5 is having the proper gear. I'm not saying you have to go out and buy the best of everything. You want to make sure that your stuff is quality, and not just quality, but if we're talking about riding gear, you want it to be well fitted to you. You don't want to be in a loose, bulky jacket that's hard to move around in. You don't want to be in something that's too small on you. You want to be in something that's breathable and comfortable, something versatile to get you through a lot of different weather. And, for example, one of my first trips I left with a 3/4 helmet. So it was an open face helmet, and, it seemed like a great idea. For local rides, it was fine. But once I get out on the highway and I was just chewing on bugs, or it was raining or hail, or it didn't have the protection I needed to be comfortable while traveling long distances. So instead of going with a 3/4, you would be far better suited to a modular helmet, one that you can flip up if weather permits, or you're just off the bike having a snack or taking a little break, but you have that protection from the elements and the safety aspect of a full face helmet while you're riding. Now, a little bit beyond that too is that you want to make sure you test out all of your gear and break it in before a long trip. There's nothing worse than wearing a helmet that takes a few days to break in, a few days in a row. It's nice if you're breaking in a helmet to wear it for a few hours, take it off, give your head a break. put it on the next day for a few hours, and slowly break it in over time. You don't want to leave on a long trip expecting to be in the saddle, 8 hours a day, 5 days in a row, and your helmet's not broken in for 3 days and you're miserable and have a headache. Same thing with your jacket. They soften up over time. You don't want to leave in a stiff jacket and it's hard to move your arms and your shoulders. So just overall gear selection is important and gear preparation is important. Now, like I said, I do have a bonus tip for you. And when I originally posted this video, I got so many comments on this mistake, and I realized, yeah, this is actually probably one of the most critical decisions you can make when going on a motorcycle trip. And one of the biggest mistakes that you can make, because this one thing can make or break a trip. And it's not motorcycle selection, it's not gear selection, it's not money, time, or any of that. It's company. Who you bring on a trip with you is absolutely critical. If you're bringing a friend or a significant other, you want to make sure everybody's on the same page, that you all want to travel at the same pace and see the same things. If, one person likes camping every night and somebody else wants to be in a hotel every night, there's going to be a lot of conflict and friction. And so selecting your company is absolutely critical. A lot of people mentioned, when I asked in the previous video, what was your biggest mistake? This was probably the number one response I got on that video, and I can totally relate. I have been with people who absolutely increased the value of a trip and the enjoyment of it. And then there have been times where I was with somebody that maybe detracted from what I could have otherwise gotten from my time. And another thing too, just to expand on this a little further, is don't be afraid to go alone. I think a lot of people have this fear or anxiety about traveling alone, or what happens if something goes wrong, or all of that. And the reality is, traveling alone is absolutely incredible, and I highly, highly recommend it. Even if it doesn't seem like something that's appealing to you, that you at least try it once and know for sure that, okay, this really isn't for me, or maybe you'll find and be surprised by the fact that, wow, this is actually really cool. I love traveling by myself. So as a matter of fact, I actually put together a video of my 10 tips for traveling solo. I'll link to it right here. And you can go ahead and watch that next if you're curious about traveling alone. Anyways, that is it for me today. I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff. And I'll catch you in the next video. Ride safe.